extraordinaire, the gemologist.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Geomologist Presents. Yesterday, it's after midnight now, but yesterday, Ozzy Osbourne passed away at the age of 76. And I got a few friends to come and talk with me and send me a message as well on the Prince of Darkness and how his music has influenced us and maybe even helped to influence us or help us in the hobby and sometimes in other things, I guess, listening to music. So, anyway, here is a little tribute to Ozzy. All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Geomologist Presents. Today is a sad day in one of the communities I'd love to hang out with. Today, 22 July 2025, we mourn the passing of John Michael Ozzy Osbourne, the Prince of Darkness. And with me today to talk about that, how Ozzy has maybe influenced them, what kind of music or what of his music they like or appreciate, um, are two panelists, I guess. I don't know if we're the heavy metal panel. I don't know. We're like a subset of Cerebrivore. I actually do have a message that I will add at the end from BJ Boyd, who wanted to join us, but he's on going on vacation. So, but he also was truly, touched by the passing of Ozzy today. So, yeah, so I'll introduce the guys who are here with me, and I'll let them start with what how this affects them. I don't know. I was surprised, I guess I will say, how I was affected. I was like shocked, and then I guess maybe because I listened to Sirius XM radio and one of the DJs, Jose Mangan, was on there, and he was actually crying. And see, I'm even getting a little teary-eyed. But I mean, I've never met the man, but I've listened to his music for a long time, and he definitely had an influence on my life, which is quite interesting. But metal does surround my life if you've heard my podcast and the like. So uh, I could talk forever, but I will introduce my panelists because it's going to be fun conversation, I think. First, we have Arlen.
Hi. Do you want me to say something about?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, let's see. I'm not, I would say, a huge metal guy, although I like a lot of kind of the metal adjacent stuff, like think about especially the kind of the sort of intersection of like metal and especially the kind of like, for lack of a better term, second and third wave like sword and sorcery revival stuff, and a lot of the way that especially the artwork has overlapped in so many ways, and then also with like RPG stuff. So I've definitely listened to um I had on my iPod, I had Paranoid from Black Sabbath, and that was one of the albums that I would just listen to the whole thing all the time.
Mhm.
So yeah, I never saw Ozzy play live or anything like that. But it's always a different thing, I think, the way that people react to, someone that you sort of have a personal connection with their stuff as an artist without necessarily having a personal connection with them as a person. And, you know, I I don't necessarily know what to say except it's obviously sad when we lose somebody.
And the other person I have in this discussion is Dark Fluid.
Hey guys. So yeah, I obviously am not old enough to have seen Black Sabbath in the original incarnation when they were with Ozzy, but it was always, from very early on, uh, a part of my youth. Ozzy was a big part of my youth in his solo career, and he was always somebody that even, but that's, you go back 25 years, 30 years, and he's in his solo career during that period. Going back that far, he's already being talked about as he's a legend. He was
Mm,
already larger than life at that point.
right.
Um, and even you go back to something like, say, um, the late 80s, 90s, at that point, he's already considered an old school guy. So it's just, I mean, the length of his career, the amount of time he's been able to stay relevant and popular, it's just amazing. And so it's weird because it is one of those icons where he was, for me, like at my age, he was there before me. He was already huge. He was huge during like my entire life, and then like now he's gone. It is really kind of one of those as you go through life, those touchstones that it seems strange that he's gone. You know, like a David Bowie or somebody else. It's just one of those people that was larger than life and is an icon that's not replaceable. Um, very, very. I mean, I didn't even know he had passed until Carl hit me up, and I was like, "What?" It's
Yeah.
almost like a shock. Like, oh no.
Yeah,
So,
it turned on the radio, like I said, and I always have it either on well, there's three bands I listen to on XM, Ozzy's Boneyard, the Hair Nation, and Liquid Metal, and I was on Ozzy's Boneyard, and they were already talking about it. I was fortunate enough to see Ozzy Osbourne twice, um, not recently at all. Unfortunately, I saw him in 1982 when I was about 12 years old. You could do the math and realize, well, my birthday was just this past weekend, so you could calculate it. I don't care. So I saw him with the Diary of a Madman, the end of the Diary of a Madman tour, and that is an infamous time when he played sort of was February 19th. I kind of looked it up. I don't remember it. I had to look it up, of course. But that was like the same weekend or night or day where he got really drunk and peed on the Alamo and was banned from San Antonio for like 10 years or something crazy like that. And I mean, but he was kind of out there at that time, and I was amazingly I saw Randy Rhoads perform live and um, back then, and it was unfortunately like about a month later he died in a tragic accident. So and then I saw Ozzy again in 2004 when they were doing the Ozfest stuff, and it was a fantastic lineup. Ozzy was fronting Black Sabbath, so that was with Tony Iommi and Bill. I think Geezer Butler was there, but Bill Ward was not. I think so. But anyway, and there was all the Judas Priest, Slayer. I saw a lot of bands like that I'd seen for the first time, like Slipknot, Lamb of God. Ozfest was pretty amazing, and the even the things that he did, right? I mean, bringing like those festivals together, promoting, all these new bands and bringing them up. Apparently, he's a very generous individual with his like blessing, I guess, as it were. But right, he was 76. He was born in 48. His career spanned from you know 68 to just 2 weeks ago. Really, I mean, his last performance was like 2 weeks ago. I mean, I did see an interview or a TikTok, whatever, a short, and it said he said he knew he was dying, right? He's like, I know I'm dying, but I want to go out, and I know I won't be able to. Oh, it was this post like right after the concert. He's like, all I could do was sit there, and I wanted to stand up and go out and sing one last time. So, so yeah, starting in interestingly the first album, Black Sabbath, released on Friday the 13th in February of 70. Right. I wasn't even born then. So yeah, it's pretty amazing. And then that's just his career with Black Sabbath. And like Dark Fluid said, he was already a legend when he was in his solo career. And that's when Dark Fluid kind of learned about him. And it's kind of cool to me that Arlen, though, much younger than us, still listens to Black Sabbath and Ozzy, and that's a testament to the staying power of that kind of music, I think.
yeah, and people, I mean, he's been around for so long. I think people kind of forget that he had to remake his career. He's kind of down and out after post Black Sabbath, and people kind of thought he was a has-been.
Mm.
So he really had to remake himself. And that's just so hard to like comprehend given how big his solo career was at the time. So, yeah, it's um he he's one of those guys too that I mean there's very few there's a handful of them, usually because they have some, sometimes it's just because they have some sort of vocal damage or something, that they have like that iconic, unique voice that you know them on the spot, no matter who they're singing with. And Ozzy was always that, he's always been that guy. No one sounds like Ozzy. No
Mhm.
one's even that I'm sure someone will come up with something that I don't think of, but I can't even think of anybody who's tried to imitate, his vocal style or anything.
Yeah, there might be a cover band or so, but no one's like, I mean, like for a good example, say, is like Axl Rose from Guns N' Roses always says, the singer I try to emulate the lead singer from Nazareth, right? So that's the hair of the dog,
Yeah.
um, I'll get his name here in a second, but you're right, like a lot, I don't, he's so iconic, his
Yeah. Sort of
style
singular.
of style of singing, right?
And it
Um,
was wildly popular. I can't remember who, but I heard somebody at one point. And he's had such a long career, it's hard to say when. In the 90s and the 2000s, they're interviewing another like really famous rock star, and he was talking about how hard it is to be in rock and roll. And he's like, unless people just really like you for some reason, like Ozzy, they just love Ozzy's voice, no matter what he's saying. It's just like it's one of those things. It's like there's nothing like you can point out about Ozzy's voice to say like, well, this is how gifted of it's like people. It's like, man, Ozzy's voice is just cool. And so, but he that can't say the guy worked so hard. And Sharon, obviously, you can't, he would have never had his comeback without her. Because she did so much to catapult his career and make sure he stayed in line and kept the business together for him on that side. But, he toured hard. He always found great musicians to work with him. And like I said, Sharon, it's hard to say anything about Ozzy's like career without talking about how much influence she had. Um, one thing that always stuck to me about him, whether it be Randy Rhoads or whoever, when he worked with somebody, he was kind of like a ride or die with them.
mhm,
He was completely dedicated to them, gave them all the credit in the world. He's never a guy to be like, take all the credit for his music. He was always like, no, I found this musician and I'm going to stick with him forever. I'm not going to try and find somebody better.
mhm,
Uh, it was usually people either dying or leaving him.
mhm.
He knew the value of the people behind him and what made him.
Yeah. That's Dan McCafferty, by the way, the lead singer of
Mm.
Nazareth.
Nazareth.
Repeat. Yeah, so Arlen, I know you when before we started recording, you're talking about Black Sabbath, Black Sabbath. So uh, how has that, you know, why has that attracted you? How has that attracted you? And I guess we could segue into like metal and its kind of interaction, intertwining with the hobby that we love so much.
Yeah, I think I don't know. I was really interested, especially when I was younger and like going through music more kind of deliberately than just like hearing stuff that, my parents were playing or something. Or like my dad has a whole lot of music that he likes and likes to play a lot of stuff, but that there's a sort of difference between, hearing it while you happen to be in the car going somewhere versus like listening to something specifically. And I really ended up there's a lot of that kind of like late 60s, 70s sound of like rock and hard rock and Led Zeppelin around that time. And then especially the early Black Sabbath from that era, I always thought was really it's such a you know, not being alive for that, it wasn't quite the same as being like, oh, this is something totally new and different, the way that reportedly people were experiencing it. But I did really enjoy, I think, as a kind of, sort of the early stages of the metal sound, I guess, that became a lot more kind of codified and a lot, consistent over time, that there's something really interesting about that kind of early flavor to, um, what Black Sabbath as a band was doing in the first couple of albums that they released, basically, and the way that it sounds different than a lot of the other stuff. And obviously, they had so many kind of different people involved in that band at different times. And um, surely people who have a lot more familiarity with the entire career have lots of opinions about what parts are really good and what aren't and what they really appreciate and not. But I thought it was really interesting the way you can kind of see that sort of the early versions of that metal sound growing in some sense through that kind of, the sort of early versions of rock and roll up into the kind of like I said, late 60s and 70s, and then into something like Black Sabbath.
Mhm. Yeah. So how does it influence your gaming, or does it? Maybe it doesn't. Maybe we're
Oh, well, I
maybe.
don't know. I think there's fun. Like I said, I think I am more familiar with a lot of the kind of uh, sort of other materials that ended up being connected with metal, especially like I said, the way that so much of the visual art of that period becomes connected both with kind of that flavor of fantasy, the sort of
Mm,
metal fantasy, for lack of a better term, and the metal music. Um, and the sort of way that like in I think I think treating the music as sort of an inspirational piece for gaming can be really cool to capture a sort of symbolic logic to a session or to an adventure or something that we can sometimes almost lose sight of in an attempt at kind of worldly verisimilitude, if that makes sense. That a lot of, right, and I've sort of talked before about this idea that I think part of why certain stories stick with us has not really so much to do with like, does this fantasy world work in the sense of like, can they harvest enough grain to support the population that they're supposed to, but the kind of symbolic resonance of like, this is something that, feels, even though it is like aesthetically not necessarily connected to something realistic, that it feels that sort of realism of like, well, I have a sense of what it means to kind of be a character in this kind of type of struggle and trying to understand what an ethical conundrum that is not necessarily grounded in a reality that I'm familiar with, but does have some sort of, like I said, symbolic reality for the characters. And that I think that that's where a lot of sessions that I've sort of played in and have fun or have run a couple of times really connect to that, like, using music as an inspiration deliberately to kind of capture that symbolic quality, right? And I think metal is a great place to do that because it is also connected with all of those stuff of like early D&D, all of the visual arts that you can pull into for that type of storytelling, all sorts of fun things that you can do with that, which is, I guess, not as much connected specifically to Ozzy Osbourne and Black Sabbath in his solo career, but I think that would be a great place to pull from, right? If you're going to do
yeah,
something like that.
sure, sure. Matt, but any thoughts there? Or
Yeah, I think that I think the music genre of heavy metal in general, just especially during some of that period and maybe, man, I might be wrong to say this, but maybe peaking in that 70s, 80s period, there was a lot of influence and in fantasy and a lot of ties, the art, album art, song subject matter. And just, I think there is a tie in the community, which I'll get to in a second. But I think that to tie off what Arlen said, yeah, I think there's a lot of attitude and feel that comes from the music, gives you a certain feel, a certain attitude, a certain emotion. And I think when it comes to like memories and how we think about things, whether it be movies or an RPG campaign we play, a lot of it's the feel and how you felt, and the memories are very tied to feeling and vibe. So
Hmm.
it's if you pick a lot of times like back when we were younger, especially when I was prepping for a campaign or we were going to set up there, we'd have music blasting in the past in the background. So I'd be, getting prepped for a campaign and putting together a dungeon, and I would have music, and that's going to influence me. I'm listening to metal music, listening to something like Ozzy or something, and that's influencing me and subconsciously, whether I know it or not, to how things I put in there and the vibe. And I think that's one of the things. If you run a game or a campaign where there's a certain vibe, it doesn't have to make logical sense all the way. I mean, look at all the Gonzo games and everything. But if you capture a vibe in that game and everybody picks it up and goes with it, um, everybody gets into it. It doesn't have to make super logical sense or whatever, but everybody gets the feel of what that game's about, what that world that is about, and coming out of that can be very satisfying because it's more than just a rote thing. You kind of capture a feel and a vibe, and invokes kind of an emotion among the party, and then you have good memories and a lot of fond memories of that thing. I think metal's very tied to it during that period of the 80s whenever I started playing because it was during the Satanic Panic
Yeah.
and both metal and D&D kind of had that shared heritage or whatever. Like they were both victims of the Satanic Panic. So it's like, if I'm playing D&D, it just so happened a lot of the people that were playing were also into metal. But if you're playing, you might as well go for it. And you're listening to metal. A lot of the guys who taught me to play were older, and a lot of those guys played guitar. They listened to metal. I would go learn about D&D from them and learn about some new metal band I hadn't heard before. And so we'd be over at their house hanging out playing, and these guys would play some album I haven't heard before. So it's all very tied in my mind together. Maybe it's just coming up during that period and carried on into the 90s because of that.
Mhm. Yeah, I used to have a list of the songs that were like on the what were the what were they called? The 13, the Nasty 13 songs. But yeah, I think um, the Filthy 13, is that it? No, I don't know what it was. Anyway, someone will look it up while I talk. Yeah, I think that's something, and I've said this before, both communities, at least when I was growing up, the metal community and the gaming community were, if you liked the music, if you played the games, then it didn't matter where you're from, how you looked, you were kind of accepted in the community. Maybe there are niche communities, maybe there are fringe communities that, misfits banding together, and that's fine by me, and I think I've really always felt that way, and maybe like you said, Dark Fluid, that because we listened to heavy metal while we were playing, or vice or played while we, whatever. They kind of almost came hand in hand, at least for me when I was growing up.
Yeah, I think you're
So
talking about the Filthy 15. I looked it up.
filthy,
It's a Filthy 15.
filthy
Yeah.
15. I
And
don't
that's the
think.
other thing to remember. A lot of people listening to heavy metal, especially during that early period, it was
Mhm.
still a newer, a fringier thing. And it was, who weren't, people are a little bit more on the edge of popularity on the outside crowd, outsiders and things like that. That was a real outsider
Yeah.
thing at the time. So,
Oh yeah,
yeah.
that's the PMRC. Man, all these guys. Ozzy did not have a song on there, but there are some Ozzy adjacent.
Yeah, you
Um,
definitely had Judas Priest and
Oh no, Sabbath trash. Well, Sabbath
oh
trash,
yeah,
but
Sabbath, yeah.
that's Ian
Yeah.
Gilliam, so it's not
Yeah.
not Ozzy. I'm shocked. Well, Wasp. So, oh, and Merciful Fate. But these bands, I mean, definitely. I know Priest contemporary, but like these later bands, I mean,
And
even though.
culturally, it was kind of connected too because you had things like heavy metal, the movie,
Mhm. Yeah. Oh yeah.
and the magazine.
Hmm.
Like it was all very much in the genre. It was all tied together.
Yeah. Yeah, but these groups like Def Leppard, I mean, King Diamond's vocal ideations are definitely reminiscent of a Ozzy on in falsetto, right? So I don't know. I would even see. I mean, had always said that he was also influenced by, Led Zeppelin and Sabbath and the early metal scene. So all these guys
It's hard not
were.
to because like if you're looking at who invented heavy metal, like way back in the day, people say like Led Zeppelin, uh, and Deep Purple and like Black Sabbath, but I think out Black Sabbath just stands apart in that kind of because they were the first ones to be. I mean, everybody else was pretty blues based and
Yeah,
rock,
it's very
but
blues.
Sabbath had some blues, but man, they were heavy and dark. I mean, I remember one of my first memories of ever hearing a Black Sabbath song and not even knowing who it was yet was being a young kid and watching like professional wrestling, I can't remember if it was NWA. It was definitely an NWA division.
Hmm.
And seeing the Road Warriors for the first time, they used to come out to Iron
Yeah.
Man,
Oh
and I
yeah.
was like, "What is this song?" And it, if you would have told me at the time that that was as old as it was, never would have believed it. I was like that because it was even still just so heavy and so out there, you know, just crazy.
I would agree with that. And it'd be good to hear Arlen's perspective, right? Because you did have like Deep Purple and Led Zeppelin, especially blues. I highly recommend, by the way, the Led Zeppelin movie that's well, it just come out on streaming, but it was out before. It is amazing. And Led Zeppelin was writing and singing about elves and stuff, right? They did a unequivocally, yes, we
Mhm.
were reading Lord of the Rings. We were on this lake. It was very idyllic. Yes, we mentioned Lord of the Rings in our music, Jimmy Page and Robert Plant, especially saying that kind of stuff. Uh, and then Deep Purple is more like anthems, Smoke on the Water. Ooh, a party song, right? It is pretty much like we burned the house, we burned everything down. But Black Sabbath, right, is like this gothic, not necessarily like satanic vibe, but the devil even if you hear like song like War Pigs and is uh very industrial, right? Has that's
Yeah, slow
Birmingham, yeah,
grinding.
Birmingham industrial feel, right? And definitely influenced by that area.
You almost picture a smoking factory in the background
Yeah.
of half their songs.
I think, well, even the cover of Black Sabbath has an old like factory in the background, right? With that scary ghost looking lady on it, so yeah, it is. It's definitely, you know, um, has that and very different, I would say, and it definitely from more rock and hard rock, which I think would be Deep Purple, Led Zeppelin, then m- metal is what stems from, you go from that Black Sabbath industrial gothic lyrics, dark lyrics that continues to, similar bands like Priest and then, Maiden and etc. Right. So pretty neat. Yeah, I think it's really interesting too. I think sometimes we even conceive. I was just thinking of that book Kings of the Wild, or even like DCC, how they have the iconic characters are like the band. We're getting the band back together, and that's almost like a meme, in our hobby where we do that. So I don't know if there are any necessarily adventures or references or songs that specifically occur in any adventures or games that I know there. Not that I know. I know. I know. Oh, well, that's not true. There's a DCC adventure called Neon Nights, although that's Dio, um, Black Sabbath, not Ozzy. But I mean, although a lot of his stuff, especially his like solo stuff, you could definitely write some adventures for those. I think. You know.
Yeah, or you could do, there was a video game from a number of years ago called Brutal Legend, that features Ozzy playing himself as a
Oh,
character in it.
really? Wow.
Yeah, and Lemmy Kilmister is in it too.
That's the one
And
Jack Black did all the voice
yeah,
for,
Jack
the main
Black is the
character.
protagonist, and he's playing Jack Black basically as the protagonist, but he has a great big double-headed battle axe that's also his electric guitar, and
Oh,
it's all
wow.
part of the thing is that it's all metal stuff, and so the soundtrack is all metal, but also it's like an open world, and you get around in like a ridiculous tricked out roadster type thing, and then all of the world is based on like iconic album art from different metal
Hmm.
albums and stuff. And you could probably do, I think that version in a tabletop game would potentially quickly feel like you're descending into parody, but you could do a trimmed down version of that, I think, of like having your one adventure that is specifically in a fantasy world where the logic is built on kind of, isn't this a sort of fitting metal thing? Or you could have we talk about kind of like Gonzo or like the sort of AD&D style blending of kind of science fantasy elements. You could have, right, a wizard just show up in, like a 1970s hot rod car as an NPC, right? That would, it seems like, totally fit as a thing for a weird moment to happen in the middle of a story that has some of those kind of wackier out there elements, right? And then have
Jamming
them
his
being,
Black Sabbath 8 track.
yeah, yeah.
Well, interesting. I mean, I'm not a music guy, but I was just kind of looking at some liner notes. And it is interesting that that musical tritone that they use in Black Sabbath is called the Devil's Interval, ominous and sound and dark, which is
Mhm.
was pretty interesting. But it was influenced by scary movies, Italian horror
Mhm.
films. Like, there was one called Black Sabbath, and um, this kind of noted here. So with Boris Karloff, incidentally. So I might have to track that down. But yeah, it's
Well, and
pretty good.
there's an odd, like, I think it's funny how much kind of talking about like Black Sabbath and Satanic Panic stuff and uh, being, I guess what I want to say is like upfront about that kind of influence and kind of wearing that proudly and the demonic stuff being sort of a part of their image. And then talking about kind of for metal music coming almost full circle, that one of the things that I think about now as sort of definitively what metal sounds like is an artist named Mick Gordon did the soundtrack for the newer Doom remakes that
Hmm.
Bethesda made, right? Because there was an old series of the first first person shooters, basically Doom 1 and 2, and then there was a Doom 3 that was a little different, and then they rebooted the series. And it is about being a character who is killing demons that are spawning up in the world because the portals to hell have been opened, and being such a badass, scary slayer character that the demons are terrified of you. And the music that is playing is awesome, and it is the most insane industrial metal that you've ever heard. And so it's a really funny kind of full circle of the kind of influence of the demonic or the satanic in metal to have come back around to um Doom being the way it is with the metal influences.
But yeah, that's pretty funny. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a somber day, but I guess we enjoy what we heard and what we continue to hear, and you know, keep his legacy going, I would say. So I think I just the last question I have for you guys. Incidentally, we did play that one shot with written by Eric Lamoureux, where you're like
Yeah, that one
yeah,
Savage Worlds one shot that we did. That was fun.
yeah. I don't know if he's ever continued to push it. I know his Wise Guys is his big thing, but I haven't
Mhm.
seen Metal Gods of the Apocalypse. It is here.
Metal.
Yeah. Um, but I think what if he did it like it's I don't know if he changed it, but it was Savage Worlds. Maybe he changed it up. I don't know.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
it's a Tri-Cube Tales adaptation, system agnostic. Okay, made it system agnostic. But yeah, we ran
Mm.
it with Savage Worlds, but it was really fun. I guess there's some
Hmm.
other things with it, but anyway, Metal Gods of the Apocalypse, where you can play like you know that type of
Yeah.
situation, really. So, so I was going to ask last question, your favorite, and we could probably take it in two parts, probably. Your favorite Black Sabbath song and your favorite Ozzy song.
That's hard.
Yeah, a lot of good ones. Yeah.
My gosh. Oh man. It's I'll start, I'll say Black Sabbath. Oh. Um it's got to be between like NIB Paranoid or like War Pigs probably.
Hmm.
I I man, it's so hard. I'm gonna I You know what? I'll go like I'll go maybe against the grain. So I'll say NIB. It's just got such a cool vibe
Hmm.
and a cool like rhythm to that song. Um, then Ozzy's tough for me. I'd say like um probably Randy Rhoads era. I'm probably gonna say like I'd say like Crazy Train. It's got to be Crazy Train. But I would say like Zach, like the later like Zach Wild and Beyond era. It's I don't want to change the world, and I don't want the world to change me. Or
Mm.
I guess it's just I don't want to change the world. So I kind of cheated and gave you like
That's
a
okay. That's
couple
okay.
different ones though.
Yeah, I mean, I would still say that his even his latter stuff, it didn't is still rocking. The stuff that he did recently with Gary Moore, etc., is still pretty good. I don't know the song necessarily. I haven't listened or downloaded the MP3s as you would do now, but there's still it still sounds good. I don't change the station. Um, you know, I think maybe
Yeah.
I I I might change the station to No More Tears because they played it so much, or but I still like Perry Mason, right?
Yeah.
So what about you, Arlen?
I don't know. I might be very boring and say that the first of the modern Marvel movies, right, was the first Iron Man movie, and over the
Hmm.
credits they play Iron Man.
Yeah. Well,
And I saw
look at that
that
influence,
movie.
man. Look at that. That's cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
Ozzy Osbourne and Black Sabbath have an influence on Marvel
Yeah.
comic book. Yeah.
And I think I saw that movie like five times in theaters because I loved it so much when I was, what, like 13,
Mhm.
basically. So I'm gonna go with that for both, is that Iron Man is a favorite of mine from Ozzy and Black Sabbath.
Okay.
So yeah, they can't nobody can fault you for that. That's a classic. I
Yeah,
mean,
classic. Yeah, I think for me, the song that I really enjoy the most, and I actually heard it again today. I just played it from my Amazon, is Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath. I don't know whatever it is about it, the lyrics, um, but I love when he says, fill your head full of lies, you bastards. I like that. It's
yeah.
kind of funny. And and for me, it's a toss-up, I think. I always loved sort of that sort of gothic, I know we use that term often here in this discussion, gothic vibe that Diary of a Madman has when he has that choral music at the in the after the bridge in the end. But Bark at the Moon, man, Jakey Lee. I know I love Randy Rhoads. Love Randy Rhoads. And Crazy Train is definitely up there. I've heard that his hands were so that you can't really play properly that riff. And Randy Rhoads, his hands were so big that he could that's people had even Zach Wild, I think I said this in an interview. His hands were so big, and it's really no one can get that riff quite correct because of that da na 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 na. But for me, Bark at the Moon, man, it's that howl that he does at the end, and Jakey Lee's solos.
It's the solos in that are amazing. I still, it's just like when you say the words "Bark at the Moon," immediately right after it comes like the riff and the solos,
Yeah.
and it's just hard to like escape that. It's so
Hmm.
good. I
Yeah.
mean, it's tough. It's tough, when you had a career like him with so many songs, it's tough.
Yeah, I guess more or less 68 to now. I mean, um, that's when I think he was flying around, the industrial area and around in and around Birmingham with Tony Iommi, and then found the other guys.
He did a lot of things. He helped a lot of people. I mean, Ozfest was huge for a long time. That's when I
Yeah.
saw him live, was Ozfest.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, like the No More Tears album. Lemmy, wrote. I think he wrote six songs. Only four made it on the album. But he was famous. He always said like, I made more money my
Mm.
entire career from that album than you know 30, 40 years of touring and all the albums
Hmm.
I did. So I mean. I mean, he helped a lot of people and he did a lot of things too. He's just iconic and he's not going to be
Well,
somebody that you can replace.
I mean, I think, and that is these. Sometimes I would say, metal artists get a bad rap, but I mean, Hearing Aid did wonderful things when they got together and did that. And all those guys were there. I mean, right. So
Hmm.
Dio put that together, but all these guys were there, Iommi and Ozzy, etc., and put aside their differences, got things together. And then, with the Ozfest, they did a lot of charity type stuff. Um, and then I heard that they broke a record in getting money. So many people love Ozzy, right? It's getting and raising money for Parkinson's research from this last concert. So, it can't be said that they're not philanthropic, despite the what naysayers might say.
Yeah.
So pretty cool. Well, good stuff. Thank you guys. Horns up for me in perpetuity. It's good listening to some Ozzy and Black Sabbath and you know um, wherever the Prince of Darkness has gone to, I'm sure he's living it up and singing it out. So maybe he and Dio are having a ball somewhere.
Oh yeah.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
So, like I mentioned earlier, our buddy BJ did not join us. He's driving to vacation, but he left a message, which was very nice, and to give his thoughts about the passing of Ozzy Osbourne. So I'll drop it here and maybe comment on it, maybe not. We'll see. BJ's usually pretty thorough with his thoughts, so let's hear from BJ.
Hey, Carl, it's BJ. I know you sent me a message about if I wanted to record something, and unfortunately, not unfortunately, it's good that I'm getting on the road for a family vacation, but I know I wanted to talk about, the passing of Ozzy Osbourne, so I thought I'd just record something and send it in case you do record a show and put it out. But, I mean, what do you say? He's the father of heavy metal music. I mean, this is a day for, I think, metalheads to mourn, but also for, anybody who, I mean, just metal, but hard rock and, what all has come after metal and influenced by Black Sabbath and then Ozzy's solo career from, all the various forms of proper metal to things like, I don't know if you count hair metal as true metal, but, certainly the hair metal bands of the 80s, the grunge, even some of the, progressive and other kinds of any kind of really hard rock music. But I guess in thinking back, one of the thoughts I had was, rock and roll was controversial. Rock and roll was always controversial. Partially, I think, and especially initially because of racial undertones, because that was more or less black people's music that now these white kids were getting into. I think that's why Elvis was as controversial as he was, because he was a white singer who should have been singing country music, but he was singing, some version of R&B that was kind of new and on the scene. But then, as rock and roll evolved, it was always full of sort of euphemisms for sex and hedonistic behavior. I mean, rock and roll literally started as a euphemism for having sex, right? But it was kind of hidden. It was buried in the lyrics. But as rock grew through the 50s and 60s, so that some of the pretense started to get dropped from the lyrics. So to me, when Black Sabbath hit, that was what they were all afraid of happening. There it was. There was the thing they were all afraid of. It's War Pigs is a protest song. Nothing that different for the era. It was the middle of the Vietnam War. But to just blatantly compare, politicians and military leaders to devil worshippers, and so many people to this day, I think, they hear the lyrics and they get the reference to sorcery and black masses and Satan, and they think it's some sort of, satanic praise, and it's not. It's an in your face kind of a thing. And that's just Black Sabbath. And of course, Black Sabbath had their time with Ozzy and where they went without Ozzy when he parted ways with them, and then his own career. But he just really embraced that. Well, I'm the Prince of Darkness. I'm the Prince of Darkness. And, and a lot of times kind of tongue in cheek, although he battled his demons with addiction and his own kind of trauma. But to then at the same time, up and down, stay married to Sharon and to have kids and grandkids and then be a family man behind the scenes. I think some people just wouldn't believe that. It's hard for people to reconcile the Prince of Darkness is also someone's kind of doddering old grandpa, which is awesome. So, man, he was one of a kind. There'll never be another one like him. I think, for all his faults, nobody's perfect for all the maybe bad choices he might have made and his addictions and stuff like that. He just seemed like still kind of basically a good person on the inside for the most part. And I, he's the kind of person I think we could all learn something from about being who we are and saying what we need to say. Even if it's not pretty, even if it's shocking, but also, you know, that doesn't mean you don't care. That's not an antisocial kind of a thing, the way I think sometimes metal, particularly for those of us who lived through the Satanic Panic, remember metal being characterized as being this sort of antisocial thing when it's not. It's a commentary on what's going on in the world. It's a commentary on acknowledging what's painful, what's scary, what's enraging, what's unjust. Which is what musicians have always done, right? So it's what artists always do. So, sorry I wasn't able to kind of sit down and chat with you, and reminisce or talk about it. So, yeah, I've been listening to Sabbath and Ozzy all day today since I got the news, as I've been moving between meetings or having moments in my office without other people around working on stuffs. And I'll be probably listening on the drive tonight, me and my family. We all loved Ozzy, so that's kind of nice. We can all listen to some Ozzy music as we get on our road trip tonight. And interestingly enough, one of the places we're going on our trip is Dollywood. I would not be surprised to see something at Dollywood commemorating Ozzy Osbourne. Just I think that seems on brand for Dolly Parton, doesn't it? All right, well, man, take care of yourself. Keep rocking. Horns up. And I was trying to think of like what's the song for today of all his catalog, and one that maybe not is well known, but See You on the Other Side. I think I've listened to that song a couple times today just because, hopefully we'll see Ozzy on the other side when our time comes. All right, talk to you later, man.
Yeah, thank you for that, BJ. That's pretty awesome. It's great that you and your family will be listening to Ozzy on the way on your trip. And See You on the Other Side is from his 1995 album, seventh album, studio album that is, called Osmosis. And pretty cool. I think other songs in that. Well, Perry Mason is from that one, which is actually one of my favorite, most interesting songs. But See You on the Other Side, another single from that album. So anyway, thank you so much, BJ. And thank you, Arlen and Dark Fluid, for joining me. This has been the GMologist Presents. And like you said, horns up. If you guys have any thoughts, send me, where to send. TJ does the intro and outro music. And today's cover is kind of a commemorative. I think it's from a picture of Rolling Stone, but this place called Rock and Brews reproduced it and sent me an email that said they're going to have a thing for Ozzy at Rock and Brews. I did not go. I just kind of hung out here, had a beer or two in memory, and talked to my buddies. So talk to you guys later. Take it easy, and we'll talk again soon.